Hello and welcome to Anything But Ordinary with Spooky and Raven. Tonight's topic, Haunted Nevada. I am your host, Spooky, and here is your other host, the awesome Miss Raven.
Hey. So tonight, is again one of our favorite shows we kind of like to do. I do anyway. One of our recurring themes.
We're trying to go through the states.
Yeah.
And every time we do one of these, I find it interesting just how many off the beaten path places are haunted in these states.
Oh, I know. There's so many more. Like we've already done a few, but I kind of want to go back and do more from those states because because we're only allowed to we'll only do like a 2-hour show. I guess we could go on forever and ever and never end, but we're gonna basically try to cover all the states. You know what I mean? And then I think eventually. And then after that, I think we'll start branching off into like Europe and Canada and things like that. But
when researching these places too, you also come across these locations where you think, "Wow, that would make a good show just on that alone."
Yeah, there's one I'll be kind of talking a little bit tonight on, where I'm like, we can do like a whole entire show. And sometimes some of these places, like, I wish we had the money where we could, like, go and just do, like, a live stream from the location,
Oh, I know. I would love to get a motorhome and just go around the country just visiting haunted places. I just want to do that so bad.
Yeah, not just haunted places, but I like a lot of the architectural things that are going on at these, those old places and stuff like that, but... when I was kind of researching, when we were studying and researching for Nevada for tonight, I did, I stumbled, on tons of things, and it's not just the paranormal. I mean, there's a lot of strange things that are occurring in Nevada, because, well, we all know about, Area 51, but, it's just, there's, so many things that it kind of ended up taking me off track, where I find myself finding, a few other upcoming show topics I want to do, and I'm not going to mention what I stumbled on because I want to save it for when we create it into a show.
for a future show.
Yeah,
I like to do the lesser known places. Like Area 51's great. It's an interesting topic, and I do enjoy watching documentaries and reports and stuff about it. But I like to do the lesser known places.
Oh, yeah, me too. But we still have to do Area 51 because it was a viewer's request. So
we'll get to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so to the viewer who requested, we still are going to do it. But
just not tonight.
Yeah, it'll be different. But tonight, what we're going to do, for those of you who aren't used to this, our reoccurring show topic that we do, what we do is we do a little bit of the history of each location, and then we go talking about the reports or claims of all these paranormal encounters that occur at each of these places and stuff like that. So, because I think it's good to know a little bit of the history, because then you know why, the reasons these places might be having the activity that they're having.
Once you know a little bit of the history, then the hauntings make sense.
Oh yeah, some of the history. At first you're oh, this place is paranormal, and you're like, oh really? And then you start to research why, and then you're like, oh my gosh, you don't even realize how some of the horrific things that take place at some of these places.
Right. Yeah. But not all places, though, had something horrific happen for them to be haunted. Sometimes it's, like the former owner of the place that loved the place, and that was the place that they really liked best and liked being at and stuff. So why don't you kick us off?
Well, thank you very much. I will go first.
You're very welcome.
Death Valley National Park, okay, that alone is a hotbed for, strange activities ranging from, UFO sightings to strange cryptid creatures. Because people think there aren't cryptid creatures in Nevada, but there really is. After what I was researching tonight, there's a ton of them. So I'm actually we're going to be doing cryptid states eventually too. But, in Death Valley alone, they have so many ghost towns there. I mean, I don't think there's more places there I can think of than anywhere else, off the top of my head.
I don't think people realize, how many ghost towns there are in Death Valley.
Ooh, a ton. And plus how many weird murders and crimes that took place just in Nevada
Right.
alone. But one of the largest I found was Rhyolite. And that place I found extremely interesting. Now, this place is located in Nye County in the Bullfrog Hills. And this ghost town is about, for those who want to go check it out, it's like 35 miles from Furnace Creek Visiting Center. And it's kind of like on the way to Betty, Nevada. Now, there is a paved road heading north just left from Highway 374. And that'll take you like right into the heart of the town. So this one's kind of pretty easy to kind of get to a little bit. But, or if you want to think about it, it's like 85 miles northwest of like Las Vegas to kind of give people a pinpoint to kind of find this area. But in the early month of August of 1904, two men, Shorty Harris and E.L. Cross, were out in this area, you know, kind of prospecting, looking for gold, of course, because that's what everybody was doing out there at this time. And they ended up hitting this pocket of quartz filled with gold. So the word spread, of course, and hundreds of would-be prospectors, you know, they're all moving into the area looking at, you know, to make it rich. And, you know, so at that time, several mines, you know, mining camps began to scatter the whole landscape. And you had, I think, like several men, a few different ones. Like one guy was named Cushing, or Cushman, Stanley, Elliott, and Bush, I believe. That's all the guys who started to begin to promote this town site of Rhyolite. And they named it after, of course, the rich ore that most of the gold was found in. You know what I mean? That's how it got its name. Now, it was in 1905 that one of the first buildings were ever constructed, and it was this 2-story hotel. And actually, it had water, which is kind of not common for back then. But what they ended up doing is they would bring in barrels, you know, like $5 a barrel. So It was kind of a hot spot for people to hit up when they, especially to have water out here. But it was between the years of 1905 and 1911 that there was almost 10,000 people basically looking to make it rich, you know, during that time. So the town was, of course, growing because all these people were coming there. So they ended up having like 19 lodging buildings, you know, like hotel places, stuff to stay. They had like 18 merchant stores. I think I read like they had the opera house, they had a casino, a school, a hospital, 50 saloons. I'm like, holy
Wow.
cow. I know.
Gotta have your saloon.
Gotta make sure you got your whiskey, right? You got 2 churches and 8 doctors. I think they had like 2 dentists and 2 undertakers. So those 2 undertakers were pretty busy. Oh, and they also had the red light district. Don't want to forget that red light district.
Oh no, let's not forget the red light district.
So with knowing of all the type of buildings and the things that they had going on back then, it will kind of give you an idea of what we're going into when we go to our paranormal. But the town did have electricity. And they had water mains at one point started put in, and then they ended up having telephones, and then they actually had their own newspaper and, of course, post office. So it was a pretty active town out in the middle of nowhere. But by 1910, you know, of course, when the mining started to slow down, a year later it closed down. And, of course, you know, the miners, they always move over to the next hotspot. So that's how we ended up getting all these ghost towns. But
Yeah.
I think by 1910 there was only from 10,000 and went to 1,000, and then by 1913, of course, they shut down the post office, and then by 1916, that's when they basically shut down all the electricity and everything, and it literally basically became a ghost town. By the 1920s, the town was basically emptied, and now when you go out there, you'll see a lot of remains still remain today, because you got the bottle house, which is all made out of glass bottles, which you can see on the bottom left-hand corner of the photo here. You have the train depot. You have like a partial structure of like this 3-story bank building and the jail. Now, that's a little bit of a tidbit of a history kind of pushed all in together. But as far as the paranormal goes out here, I guess it's really active a lot. And it's not just during the night. People are experiencing things during the day. Now, people are talking about hearing like disembodied conversations that are going on there. Like, let's say me and you just went out there and we're just hanging out and checking out the ruins and things. It's like we'd be hearing other people around and there's no one there to be found. They're saying they're constantly hearing these muffled conversations. People are talking about seeing full body apparitions in several different locations of the town. And a lot of times, like in the bank-ish, which the bank is kind of broke down, but they always see like this minor-ish looking guy. People are talking about hearing faint music sounds. And I'm assuming probably from the saloons. They had 50 saloons, you know what I mean?
Wow.
I'm
I
sure.
I can't get over that. 50 saloons and 2 churches. That blows my mind. Sorry.
The guy who ran the saloon was also the pastor. No, but then you have people who are talking about when they're there and they're looking around and stuff, they actually feel like they're being followed or watched. And there's actually people who've been touched or pushed here before. But you do hear, it's weird because they say when they're in certain sections, it sounds like there's boots walking like on the building's floorboards or walking on the ground behind them. And of course, when you turn around and look anywhere, there's nobody to be found. Now they talk about also seeing glowing orbs, dowdy, or I guess you want to call them like ghost lights too, but they're like, some people see like full orbs with their eyes, not just taking pictures.
Wow.
But you're seeing them with your eyes. And they also seen like these ghost lights that move around all these different buildings at nighttime. Now, the main one that people seem to see a lot is this one, they kind of call him the brown man, because he's like a miner who's like in dark brown clothing and has like a miner's cap on, whatever that is. I'm not really sure. It's like one of those old cloth hats, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
But basically they're saying that this guy, they think it's this one guy, because there was this gold prospector, I guess, who died in town. I'm sure he wasn't the only one, but he ended up hitting like this huge vein and brought in like some huge gold nuggets to get tested. And while he was, having all that stuff, they said that the barber in town ended up poisoning this guy to steal his gold. So, which makes you barbers. You know how like they used to have that barber pole out there, was red. You know what I mean?
Red and white.
Yeah, but the shadow spirits, there's tons of shadow spirits seen here too. And they're always seen near the old bank and also the bottle house. But that's usually only where the shadow entities are seen. So it makes you wonder if there's like a lot of more negative energy or negative things that might have occurred in that area. Because a lot of people say usually when you see shadow entities, it's more of a negative feeling. So it makes you wonder what kind of happened in those two areas for people to always see shadow beings in just those sections. But I did, when I was kind of researching Rhyolite and other things, I did come across some interesting articles that were written up in the 1900s. Now, this place I'm going to kind of talk about, I'm not quite sure 100% exactly where it is, but I'm gauging maybe like 50 to 60 miles away from this town. But it was the people who were on their way to Rhyolite. They ended up stopping at this place, which the natives call the Tule holes, Tule holes, and like they're watering holes or whatever. Now, I guess a lot of strange things occur there as well. And I was reading this one article, and it was printed out of the Bullfrog Miner from Rhyolite. It was one of their printing papers or whatever. And it happened in December of 1907. And the headlines read, man dragged 500 feet. Well,
Wow.
one day Mr. Keyes was out on one of his prospecting trips or whatever. And he stopped at that Tule holes, the Tule holes, watering hole. Anyway, for water. And he wasn't really superstitious or anything like that, so he didn't really care. He just camped right on the spot. So a lot of people kind of, I guess, knew about staying away from there because strange things happen there all the time. And this guy's like, whatever, I'm just going to camp out by the water. And because I guess they're saying like things have been happening there for like over 300 years. Now, this is in 1907, so if it's been happening 300 years all the way up to that date, makes you wonder all the things that were occurring. But he's like, whatever, I don't believe in this hocus pocus stuff. So he sets up camp. He's settling in for the night, and all that whole entire night while he was camping, he heard these weird noises. And then he started seeing like these strange lights moving all around the valley. And he said the air seemed to just be full of ghostly sounds, which we call disembodied. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there was nobody around because, like I said, that one area, Rhyolite's like 50, 60 miles away, and Bullfrog is like a couple hundred, whatever they're saying, you know what I mean, miles away. But he was hearing like moans of people, young and old off in the distance, and he just couldn't sleep. And when he woke up the next morning, he had realized when he fell asleep, something grabbed him and dragged him 500 feet from the place he had made camp. And he said he couldn't even see the lines in the sand or he could even see the lines in the sand where he was dragged away. But I would think, like, if I was sleeping...
How heavy do you have to be asleep for something to drag you 500 feet and you not know it?
I was thinking the guy had a little whiskey because he's so freaked out from all the, voices and everything going on around him in the darkness and all the weird lights and stuff going around. I'm thinking he had some whiskey to help him pass out. But he said he woke up and you can see his body, Mark, dragged 500 feet from where he was camping. And he said after spending the night there in that weird place, he couldn't wait to tell somebody what happened. So when he reached Rhyolite, he related the story to the editor of the local newspaper. And he's like, I'm telling the truth when I say I was dragged across the wash. And he's like, I heard so much unearthly and disturbed sounds all around these watering hole areas. And, but the thing is, if you're going out to Rhyolite, try to see if you can, I'm sure out there you'll have better, some of the national park guys or whatever you could talk to ask them to find where the TULE holes are, water holes. I think it's like 30 miles away, but I guess it's extremely active there as well. And I thought I should talk about those two together since they're so close in Death Valley.
Yeah, really.
But Death Valley alone is freaky because almost every area in Death Valley people talk about strange happenings.
Well, they have those moving rocks out there.
Yeah, but I think they kind of figured that out. Wasn't it like ice, water, and wind blowing?
I don't know if they ever figured that out or not, but they have those moving rocks out there. But I know that the Death Valley area is just full of ghost towns.
Yeah, but not just ghost towns, but ghostly things because people are seeing these strange lights moving about, even away from
Actually, I'm kind of impressed with Rhyolite. Looking at these photos,
there's tons more.
That one building looks like it's blocks and it's like 3 stories high. That must have been quite a metropolis in its day.
That was the bank. The bottom one and the top one is the bank and the jail and stuff, and that's kind of like what's left. But on Wikipedia, which I'll put in our references, they have a ton more photos of Rhyolite, and there's a few more buildings. Still have like the train depot up and the school and another one. So there's a lot of places if you're in the paranormal and want to go do a little paranormal investigating. This is definitely the place to go hit up because there is a ton of activity that seems to be occurring during the daytime and at nighttime. And like I said, if you make it all the way out here, try to talk to one of the rangers and see if you can get directions to the TULE holes because that place is really messed up. I guess for over 300 years prior of 1907, for 300 years up to that, people were seeing stuff and people are still seeing stuff in that area. There's something going on that you really want to check out to find out. But it's not just the paranormal that's happening in Rhyolite. There's this strange architectural type of stuff or sculptures. There's this guy who his name's Albert I forgot his last name, but he built like these life-size figures draped in white, and there's art kind of like all over a little bit around Rhyolite, and they're all kind of different in some unique way.
Wow,
so that alone is interesting.
That's spooky in itself.
Yeah, but that alone's kind of cool to check out too. But
yeah, I
wanted to talk about this place because there's just so much that seems to be going on during the day and at night, and I never see this place on ghost paranormal shows, on TV.
No.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to, talk about this one. And there's so much more about it. And I have, we'll have it in references where you guys go read more about people's personal stories and paranormal. But I think there's actually some videos and EVPs on the internet. We don't like to take other people's stuff unless we can use it.
No, we don't.
But if you look up Rhyolite, you'll find some people's paranormal photos and videos on the internet too. But I definitely want to go to this place, just because there's so much of the
place on my bucket list.
Yeah, there's so much left of the old structures, and the fact that there's so much paranormal. And I don't think a lot of it. I think some of it could be like residual, but I think a lot of it is intelligent, just because it's interacting with people, and there's some of them are tricksters. They're messing with you at the same time. you know.
Wow.
You can go on to yours if you like.
Well, thank you. Unionville, Nevada. The entire town, by the way. This is an unincorporated village or town that is located south of Interstate 80, and it's east of State Route 400 on Unionville Road. You have to travel down. You have to travel down 7 miles of a gravel road to get to this place. And right now, there are approximately 20 residents left. And the sad thing is, really, there is little, if anything, done to preserve this town. About all that remains are a couple of buildings and an old schoolhouse, which are dilapidated at best. During a raging snowstorm in 1861, the first group settled in Unionville. They set up camp, and this was the beginning of the mining town. They mined silver there. In 1862, Mark Twain set up a camp, but he couldn't make a go at being a prospector, and he did not like the so-called crude living conditions, so he left something like a couple months after his arrival. The mining boom did not happen.
What did he expect it was going to be, you know what I mean, for back then?
I know, they're just starting this place.
A lot of places are going to be crude and not, you know, up to par. I'm like, don't go out in the country then.
Yeah, really. The mining boom did not really happen for Unionville until the 1870s, and at that time the population was about 1,500 people, which made it a big town, but not as big as some got. So this, of course, you know, it brought saloons and brothels and churches and schools and various businesses. And also with that growing population, there was also claim jumping and murders. One event in the town's history is, and this is really, to me, a dark part of the history, was the expulsion of the Chinese who came to prospect the silver. Like in January of 1869, there was a population of 35 Chinese. And for some reason in the Old West, prejudice against Chinese was almost rampant. A group of white settlers formed the Anti-Chinese League and rounded up the population and forced them out of town. And no one in that town, the churchgoers, the marshal, nobody did anything to stop them. They just let them do it. So since they were outmanned and outgunned, they left. And they were loaded into wagons, and they were taken about 35 miles to Mill City and left. Now, of course, as with any boomtown, things come to an end. In the early 1870s, the Union Pacific Railroad was completed, but it bypassed Unionville completely. And it basically established Winnemucca as the trading and shipping center for that area. Now this compounded with the fact that no major vein of silver was ever found. This was not one of the most productive mines at all. There was a little bit of silver found. There was quartz with silver in it, but nobody ever really hit the mother lode. And that also contributed to the decline of the town. And today, all that remains is just one business, a tourist inn, and there are several houses there that, you know, actually nice houses that people live in. But like I said, there, you know, it only has like a population of 20 people. So I guess if you really want to live in isolation and out away from everybody, that would be the place to go.
Now, well, there's a lot of places that you could go to be isolated, but
yeah, if you want to be kind of isolated but still have a neighbor or two, that would be the place to go. I mean, you know, there are some nice houses that sit in there. Now, as far as the hauntings go, it's said that any place you go in the old part of this town, you will encounter something. In the summer heat, you'll be walking along looking at whatever's left, and you'll just suddenly walk right into a cold spot. You'll hear disembodied voices, and some of them in a foreign language, and I'm kind of thinking that might be Chinese, since they were ran out, and I'm sure that some of them were killed in the process.
Well, right.
They say you'll see partial and even full apparitions. Sometimes you may even feel a hand touch you or pass a figure that's, dressed in Old West clothing, and it will smile and tip their hat, then disappear.
Well, that guy's
There,
friendly.
yeah, that one's friendly.
Or maybe that's his cue to the other spirits. Okay, beat that guy up next. Okay, yay.
Yeah, he's next on our list. But that's
Rob
what they
him.
did back then in the Old West, especially with women. Even outlaws were like that. They would, kind of tip their hat. Not all of them smiled, I'll bet. There are even reports of piano music coming from the area where the old saloon and brothel once stood. But this is a place where they say that no matter where you go here, you will run into a spirit and or some sort of haunting. And even the people that live there today even say that strange things happen. They say especially at night, but some say that you can run, you can encounter any of this any time of the day or the night. But nothing seems to be harmful. They're not trying to hurt anybody. It's just that it all seems benign, and they say that a lot of it may even be residual.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Except for maybe the hat tipping, but that might be intelligent in a way. But see,
I think that one's intelligent. I think that one, unless he's seeing something there that we don't see
right,
or nobody else sees.
right, or it's just a recorded image in time. But the thing is, I think, okay, you said that there are people living in the area really close by.
Yeah.
Maybe you could almost possibly discount the music part because maybe those people were playing music or something and it contaminated the air and wafted over. Do you know what I mean? It's
Well,
hard to
that's
say with
always
that
that's
one.
always a possibility, but they're not living right up next to these old buildings either. They do live in the area, but they're kind of scattered around out there.
Yeah, but I'm assuming sound travels just as well through the desert as it does in the
Oh, I would
woods.
imagine. I would imagine in a place like this, the sound really travels.
So they only have a couple of the old buildings left at this place, or is there ruins
Well,
or
from what I found, that there are very few buildings standing. There are some foundations, and you can see where the town was at. But like in the photo, the old schoolhouse is still standing. There are a couple of buildings that are still standing, but this place is basically gone.
I think someone asked a question. It says, "Why does a shadow person have to be negative?" I've seen two shadow persons, and there was not. Oh, they don't have to be negative. We're just saying people seem to say or relate that when they're encountering them. A lot of times, people are saying they have a negative thing that seems to occur.
Right.
We're not saying that they are or they aren't. Because me and Spooky never claim to be experts. We just are discussing this stuff because, like you guys, we are interested in all this stuff too. But when they're talking about that area of when I was talking about Rhyolite, as far as seeing those shadow entities, they seem to have had a negative, either a fearful or some type of negative thing happen towards them, like a
I
push
think it's
or a
a I
shove.
think it's a person's perspective of them, because we just did a show on shadow people, and not all of the encounters were negative.
No, some of them are just
And
neutral.
there were, yeah, some were neutral, and some actually believed they were angels watching over them.
Right. Everybody has seems to have a different encounter when it comes with apparitions, shadow entities, and what have you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I guess I probably should have better explained myself. Sometimes when we're doing show live, we're trying to like, okay, let's remember everything we have to say and get it all out, for the history and the paranormal stuff, so you guys, can see the interesting things that we found and stuff. And sometimes we forget. We might miss a word here or two, or could have better explained it. So I apologize if I didn't explain it right. But from what my understanding of from what they were experiencing at Rhyolite when it came to the shadow entities at a couple of the places, especially the bank area, it seemed to have like a negative vibe or feeling to it, and the way that it was approaching people was sort of in a negative manner. Like a person felt threatened. Because sometimes some of these things have charged people before and push them. And I'm not saying so much at that place, but I've heard about that. So I can kind of see where some of them, but like anybody, being alive or dead, we have negative people, we have positive people. So I'm sure there's negative spirits and positive spirits. But, with this town, it sounds interesting too. And at least they have some of the old structures, but you don't even need a full old, because when I'm trying to hit all these places up, I want to like look at all the old structures as well as, possibly having a little paranormal investigation too.
Right.
But Nevada is so filled with things. There's so many that you could just.
And a lot of times
like 6 months and not hit every place.
I bet you could. A lot of times I enjoy the history really more than I enjoy the stories of the hauntings. But I'm interested in history. That history is just something that I thoroughly enjoy.
But I would think like banks and the saloons would have a little bit of more of a negative overcast over it just because of bad transgressions and things that could have happened there, getting robbed, not getting a good deal for your gold, or people find out that you have a ton of gold and they come and jack you, or you get a little too drunk at the bar and then you get in a fight and bang bang you're dead stuff. But another place I found was Silver Terrace Cemetery, because we decided we were going to talk about some cemeteries too, because there's a lot of cemeteries scattered all over Nevada. But this cemetery is located on Cemetery Road in Virginia City, Nevada, which Virginia City is a great place to go to too. But this cemetery is actually made up of like several cemeteries into one. I think it's like 10, I believe, from if I was reading correctly. But they're all built on like a series of different terraces, and they sit on like the steep hillside above the city. Now, in 1860, in Virginia City, of course, was expanding, and I think even at like one point they had almost like 30,000 people back in the 1800s, which came with that. You're going to have the need for cemeteries because, of course, you have people who die from illnesses or mining accidents, murder, what have you. You know what I mean? And
there were tons and tons of people back then that actually more people died from diseases.
Yeah.
Really, than anything else.
Right. Or your tooth. Like a lot of people die from infections from their teeth. But there were almost, I think, 300 mining accidents that did occur in the 1800s alone in that area, in Virginia City area.
Wow.
But the people who are buried there, a lot of them are just like, the local residences, like the miners or the business owners at that time period and their family, you know what I mean? But nearly every plot is fenced in or bordered because, that's kind of like the typical practice back then for the Victorian type area or whatever. And each plot kind of has like their own unique style or characteristic design, for each little cemetery section because of who developed it, because you had some of them were the one section's like the Masons, and you have another one who's like the International Order can't talk now, of Odd Fellows. There was another section I think was the Exempt Firemen, and another one was like the Order of the Red Men. So, you know what I mean? You get the drift. Like, there's different cemetery sections, so they all had their own specific way and design for their little section. Now, basically, each of these organizations, they just, they developed their own cemetery for their own personal members and their families, and they would have, some of these people have, like, just plain grave markers, or some would have wood, and some would have metal and cut stone. So I guess it just really depended on the group and the money, you know what I mean? But many say that this area is known to have a ton of paranormal activity occur here, and which is, from what I was reading, is more than any other cemetery normally that I read about, So it seems like it's really active, just as much as Virginia City was at that time. But people are talking about always seeing this apparition of a little girl, and she always seems to be roaming throughout the whole cemetery, almost like she's playing among the headstones, you know what I mean? Which is weird. Why are people always seeing a little girl in white?
I know.
She gets around a lot to different
She sure
places.
does.
But,
So doesn't her older sister, the lady in white.
yeah.
That one gets around a lot, too.
Yeah. But people talk about seeing glowing orbs. Now, this is the one thing I find interesting, because they talk about, like, it's almost like a bluish light, and it glides about all the different headstones. And some say they've even seen some of the headstones glow at night, which I think that's extremely interesting. But this is the thing that I want. When you hear about cemeteries where you can see glowing orbs with your own eyes, not just taking photos, that's the type of place I want to go to, because I want to investigate like what's creating this energy. You know what I mean? Is it something natural, or is it paranormal? And to actually have people who are witnesses to actually seeing it all the time with their bare eyes, I find that more fascinating than capturing it on camera or video. But you know, people are always talking about seeing shadow entities at this place as well. And I guess when people go here during the day or night, they're capturing EVPs all the time. But the cemetery is only open to the public during the day, but it's closed at dusk. So I think you would probably have to get permission to try to do like a night investigation, but it is open for you to roam around during the daytime for sure. You know, but
well, you can walk over there at night. You don't have to go in it. Just walk over there or drive over there and just sit and see what you see.
Well, the thing is, I think this place is like 10 acres. I can't 100% remember like the allotted.
Well, it looks like, from what I'm looking at, it looks like it's on both sides of the road.
Well, the photo I got, I can only use this much, but there's a lot more photos you can look up in our references later. Well, it kind of shows the whole entire area and stuff like that. And but it's pretty huge, and it's layered up the hillside. You know, of course, they all have their different sections for the different people's religions and their groups. Like I was talking about the Masons and the firemen and stuff like that. But I find it fascinating is the glowing orbs and the tombstones lighting up. But people seeing the lighted orbs, you know, that's just something that I want to experience visually, not, you know, through a camera, but with my own eyes, and, you know, experience that. Yeah. That's why I want to go to this place. Plus, it's right next to Virginia City, so you can hit up Virginia City, which is it's got tons of haunted places there, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And absolutely. The fact that you had over 300 mining accidents alone in this area, I'm sure the whole place is chock full of residual and intelligent hauntings taking place here.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm looking at this picture. There's got to be more to this than what is showing, but
well, there is, but we're trying not to take other people's photos because.
Well, that's true, absolutely. Yeah, and speaking of cemeteries, the Boulder Pet Cemetery, also known as the El Dorado Valley Pet Cemetery in Boulder City, Nevada.
Well, what's the thing with the photos, though? You know what I mean? We wanted to be able to have more photos for this one.
Okay, I am almost sick that I don't have photos to show you of this place, but there was absolutely none that I could use.
Get permission yeah.
Without permission, but I want to tell you, we're going to post the links to this place.
Oh, wait. Somebody asked a question. Sorry. Sometimes it's hard for us to catch our mod's question, but hold on. Somebody's asking a question. Yeah, we'll give you the coordinates. We'll put the coordinates.
Miguel.
Yeah, we'll put the coordinates to. Did he want it for Silver? Which one was it for? Silver Cemetery. Well, actually,
all of them.
We can put coordinates for every single one of them later tonight in references, and then you guys can hit them up. It'll just take me a while to go Google them up and put them in, and then I'll put them all in, and then you guys can hit them all up on your Paranormal Nevada trip. So
there you go.
Go ahead.
Like I said, I'm almost sick that I don't have photos to show you of this place because it is just absolutely amazing. But we are going to post the links, and you can go. You can check out the links. There are a ton of photographs of this place. It's located just off of US 95, which is Veterans Memorial Highway. It's near Route J, near the Aerodome, and it actually sits between Boulder City and Searchlight, Nevada. This is actually an illegal cemetery. It's in the desert, and it's on federal land.
It's huge, though, when we Google Earthed it.
It's huge. It's like 3 acres.
Yeah.
And while people disagree when it was established, some say the 1930s, while others say the 1950s. I found it just amazing. Like I said, it covers 3 acres, and the pets were truly loved. You can tell by the markers that exist. Some actually have professional markers and headstones, and others have these homemade markers. And even with the homemade markers, you can tell that a lot of love went into them. I mean, the place is just amazing. Um, Even though it is illegal to bury pets there, and there is a sign saying that pets burials are prohibited, the latest marker found is dated 2015. So people are still sneaking in here and burying their pets.
It's basically out in the middle of nowhere. So who's
It
gonna
is.
get you and be like,
I know.
no, you know?
Even with that sign's not going to stop people. This place is out in the middle of nowhere.
It's over
You
by
can
the
just walk in,
aerodrome.
bury your pet, and leave. Nobody would see you.
Yeah,
it's not. The place is not even guarded.
Yeah, it's right off of that Veteran Memorial Highway in US 95 and Route J. It's like literally right, you just hop right when you get to, past the aerodrome, and then you get your GPS says Route J right here. It's between Route J and Route E. It's right there. I mean, you're out in the middle of nowhere. They're too busy busting people in Vegas and other places. They're gonna be like, hey, don't put your pet here. Who cares?
Right.
We got other things to do.
Yeah, and some of it, the older part of it, is in disrepair and neglected, but there are parts that shows that the graves are still being taken care of.
Yeah.
I mean, they're being cleaned up. The headstones are being cleaned up and stuff, And at one time, the government was going to bulldoze this cemetery, but citizens got together and protested, so the government left it alone, thinking that sooner or later it would wash away, since it does sit in an area that is prone to flash flooding. And you can clearly see, though, that there are parts of it that appear to, have done so. There is one celebrity buried there. His name is Flash, and he was the son of Ren 1010. Now, for those of you who do not know who Ren 1010 is, he was a German Shepherd that was famous in the 1950s and 60s, and the star of a TV show called The Adventures of Ren 1010. It was a Western about an orphan boy and his heroic German Shepherd that lived on an army post. Now, this place is also said to hold the bodies of the victims of the mafia. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense.
So they're using the pet cemetery as a cover for dumping
exactly
gangster bodies.
Exactly. And if you think about it, that makes sense, because they could bury a body out there and people would think it was just another pet grave.
Oh, don't
and
mind
after
that. That's just Fido,
Yeah. I had something to say, but I'm not going to go there. Anyway, after this one flash flood, there have been bones found that were thought to be human. But when I started researching that, I couldn't find any reports as to whether or not the bones were tested to find out for sure. But as far as the hauntings in this place go, there have been reports of disembodied voices. So that kind of goes with the mafia body dumping. There's been cold spots and sometimes the feeling of being watched. My personal opinion, I lost my train of thought and I apologize. There are reports of barking when no dogs were in the area. There's even been reports of cats meowing. And it's not just dogs and cats buried here either. I mean, it's all kinds of pets, turtles, whatever.
Monkeys?
And I don't know.
I thought you just said there was tons of... What if somebody buried their tiger out there,
I don't know. I think there was one of a snake being buried out there. And also they say while you're there, walking around, you get this feeling of something pressing against your leg, like a dog or something.
Mm-hmm.
But the most reported occurrence is that of this white cat that will appear and follow you around. They say if it likes you. I don't know how they know that or not. But when you try to pet it, it disappears. they say it just disappear right in front of you.
Typical cat.
Uh, yeah,
Typical cat.
really.
Try to pet the
Cats are
kitty.
like that. But there's been no unfriendly spirits reported. It seems like all of these hauntings are kind of benign and maybe, except for the cat, maybe even residual.
I like this place
But
just
they say
because it
there's,
just shows like how much love people have for their fur babies. You know what I mean? To go
I
out
know,
and give them
and
a respectful cemetery of their
I
own.
know, and I'll tell you, when I was researching this particular one, for some reason this one caught my attention. I said, "Oh well, a pet cemetery, big deal." But when I started going through these photographs, I could not believe the love that people put in burying their pets out there. It was just amazing to me. Some even have professional headstones out there.
Yeah, when
And
we're gonna
if you,
have the links for you guys to look at all the photos because we try to
yeah,
respect
there were a
people's.
ton of them.
We try to respect people and not take all their stuff, but we'll have the links for it. But when we were Google Earthing this, and when you zoom in, and I couldn't believe how huge it was.
I know it. Like I said, it's 3 acres. They said it covers 3 acres, and people are still going in there and burying their pets, and they could get away with it because like we said earlier, this place sits out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, but when you were saying people are hearing disembodied voices and seeing apparitions and stuff, it doesn't always mean that it has to be gangster because we were talking about Nevada and you had tons of people coming here for the gold and silver and
Right.
just trucking through the desert alone.
And this
And
was
who
an
knows
area,
who could have
not
died in
this
the area.
particular spot, but this isn't an area though where there was mining going on.
Yeah, but you don't even
But
need mining, but people trucking through the desert, not having enough food or water supplies, they could perish or getting killed by other people. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
you don't.
pioneers going through there, a lot of them died in the desert.
Yeah.
They
So you just
just they
don't know
just
who.
succumbed to the elements.
Right. So you don't quite know what the disembodied voices are really coming from. It doesn't necessarily prove that there's gangsters there.
There
It
have
could have
not
been
been any
something else.
reports of any human apparitions, just the voices.
Mm.
And because I did when I saw that there were disembodied voices reported, so I started really looking to see if I could find where anyone said that they had seen an apparition, and the only real apparition was
Or
this white
animals.
cat.
The animal
Yeah,
apparitions.
we're
Yeah.
animals.
I think
And
it's fascinating though too, just the fact that these spirit animals are showing themselves. But when you're out in the desert, it'd be cool if you could actually camp out at some of these places. I wonder if you could get permission, like especially Rhyolite, if you could get permission to camp out in that area. Because you imagine being there at night with all the stars out, and then just experiencing strange paranormal stuff too. Just the whole
yeah,
atmosphere would be awesome. But this place is easy to access, and there are
yeah,
two off
very.
roads right by it. So I mean, we don't suggest parking right there off of the highway because you might get in trouble if a cop happens to come by. But there are two Route J and Route E that are right there where you can pull off onto the dirt road there and just park. You won't get lost. I mean, literally, there's no
No.
trees. It's like right there in the open. So if you hop out of your car to go walk to the cemetery,
You
you'll
can still see the highway
yeah,
from the
you'll
place.
find your way back unless you walk into some weird portal that transports you to another time and dimension. Then we can't help you. But it's definitely a place to go check out, and I want to hit this up if I ever make it to
I would
Nevada
love to
again.
go to this place to see it in person because, like I said, I thought that the photographs were amazing.
Yeah, how much people put
And
into this,
we're
and
going to we're going to put up 3 different links to this place, and the thing of it is, on all 3 links, there are very few repeats of the photographs.
yeah.
It's like these 3 people picked out a section and photographed it. So you're not going to be going through a lot of photographs of the same thing.
Another place I found, like, I'm gonna go into one more and then we could take a quick break so you can get a drink of water or whatever. But
Okay.
another place, and I know this place is kind of popular, but it's worth mentioning for those, you know what I mean, who are into the paranormal and stuff. And I like doing these because it gives people ideas of, to want to go travel a little bit. And while you're traveling, you can hit up all these different places, some of them known and some of them unknown. But this is the Mackay Mansion. And I know this has been on a few different paranormal shows over the year, but I still found this place fascinating before it being on some of those paranormal shows. You know what I mean? Because I just like the area, the structure of the building, and then the history and the story about it. But this is located in Virginia City, so you can go hit up the cemetery and hit this place. But it's on South D Street, so it's not too far from the cemetery too. But this is a 3-story Italianate type of brick style mansion, and it was built in 1859 by the Hearst family. Now the Gould and Curry Mining Company used this place as their office space, as well as the home for the company's superintendent, which was George Hearst and his family at the time. Now this 3-story structure had like this, it still does, this warp around wooden veranda and deck, which I would love to have a place like had a veranda deck that went all the way around.
I know, I like the way that place looks.
And it's got the colonnade square posts, but inside there's this beautiful hand carved one-piece staircase. I mean, that's amazing.
Wow.
That the craft and the ability that people had back then to build beautiful homemade furnitures, and just to have one piece
and built it by hand.
Yeah, carved wooden staircase. Oh, it was beautiful on the inside when I was seeing it. But they also had a parlor back then. It still does. But they have a living space, a kitchen, and then the office room. But on the second floor are the bedrooms, but the bottom floor was just like the living space and the office and thing. And then there is like a basement, but it's not technically a basement. It was just like the carriage house at the time. But in the 1870s, they actually brought in like this large 500-gallon gravity flow water tank and heater, and they installed, indoor plumbing, which was awesome for back in the 1870s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like I said, the ground floor, it's on the back side of this. It opens up to the gardens that they have there. And like I said, back in the time they used it as a carriage house, not so much now. But the Hearst family lived there until about the mid-1870s, in which they then sold the place to a man named John William Mackay. Now, this is where his wife, her name was Mary Louise, and her son Clarence H. Mackay, that they had together, they had the son. But I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that she might have been married before and had a daughter in a previous marriage, and he ended up, kind of like taking the daughter as his own daughter, you know what I mean? But I wasn't 100% sure, but I read it on a few sites, but I'm not sure if it's actually factual, but I know for a fact that they did have a son named Clarence. Now, they did live at this place for a while, and John Mackay was an extremely wealthy man, because he was known as one of the 3 Silver Kings during that time. And during that time, he actually had like a large safe installed in the home in one of the bedroom closets, because he kept like tons of bars of gold bullion there. You know what I mean? Could you imagine having like this huge, the old Western safes that go from the floor to the ceiling, and you walk in and you just have huge bars of gold? I mean, that'd be amazing. But here I want money. You know what I mean? But one night, because there was gold in there, I heard this rumor that these 2 guys decided that they were going to rip off John Mackay. So they broke into his home, because, temptation got the better of them. And they ended up running into 2 men. They ran into the armed guards that were guarding his safe, and they ended up shooting them dead center in the chest, and they died in the home right there. So we know of 2 I guess it's kind of like murder, but they killed them. You know what I mean? So we know of 2 deaths for sure that happened in this building. But the mansion changed hands several times, and it's been kept in pretty much good condition this whole time, Now, a lot of the original furnishing is still in the home today. They have like gold-plated chandeliers. They still have the original carpets and the wallpaper. They do have like Civil War era type of dolls and toys in this place, as well as several other items. And in the reference again tonight, like I said, I'll post some of the links to the museum's website where you guys can actually do like a virtual tour of this place. But over the years, it's been said by past owners and actually the staff members and visitors, they say that the Mackay Mansion has a ton of paranormal activity. I think I lost Spooky again. Yeah, she got kicked off. Spooky's having computer issues, so she's gonna have to end up getting, I think, like a new. I don't know if this is Spooky calling back in or not. Let me find out. Hold on a second. Spooky, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, I was just telling them how you guys are having computer issues. So you're going to have to get a new computer. But what I was talking about is this place still has a lot of its original furnishing still there. It's got the same carpet, wallpaper, and they also have like objects from the Civil War area, like dolls and toys and stuff, and several other items. And like I was telling the listeners, you can actually do a virtual tour through the museum website, and I'll place that later in our references. But there's staff members, visitors, and past owners all talk about this place having a ton of paranormal activity. Now, people have said to have seen an apparition of a young woman dressed in a Victorian era dress in living room. Let me see if actually your volume's up too, because sometimes when you leave, your volume goes down really low. Yeah, it was down low. I got you back here. But they see this woman that's dressed in Victorian type of dress in the living room, and she's also seen walking around a lot on the third floor. The third floor being the second floor if you count the carriage house basement, you know what I mean? But some say it's that of Mrs. Mackay, but I don't know if it's her, because somehow I think she would rather haunt her Paris mansion, because when they left, John Mackay, they went back to London and he died in London, but they owned a huge mansion in Paris. So I would assume that she would haunt Paris mansion over
You would think so.
this one, because from what I was reading, she wasn't really happy here in the first place. You know what I mean? But some people think it's her spirit that's haunting this place, but I don't think it is. You know what I mean? It could be a residual. But but possibly I think it's just another female resident that happened to may have lived there during another time period. But then again, it could be like a residual imprint. But there is also a male apparition that's been seen near the safe closet where the two robbers were killed, which I'm assuming it's probably one of them. And then you have the staff and the tourists who always talk about seeing a little girl in a white dress. Now, some of them have even witnessed two little girls at the same time. And so the staff, because they see these two little girls a lot, they named them Emma and Lily. And now people always talk about being touched or having like an item of their clothing like tugged on while they're visiting or in this place. Now, upstairs in one of the rooms, there is this bed in this bedroom that seems to get messed with a lot, because it's a museum, so they have everything neat all the time. But one of the bedrooms, often you walk up and you find the bed messed up, or other objects in the house are being moved about. Like you'll have something belongs in the bedroom, you'll find it down in the living room area or somewhere else, and the house was all locked up, nobody's in it, but somehow these things are being moved around or tossed about. And a lot of people, or the staff, they think it's these little girl spirits trying to get people's attention. There's people who have been in there during the day, and the staff member was talking to him, telling him the history or whatever, and this blanket got pulled out of the chest and went up in the air and it went over this one guy. So, I mean, they're pretty active at this place. You know what I mean? Now, supposedly, when Johnny Depp stayed here, Johnny Depp, the famous actor, stayed at this mansion one time during one of his movies being filmed, and it said that he too had witnessed one of these little girl apparitions, and
Wow.
she basically woke him. This is what they say. I don't know. I didn't talk to the guy, so I can't say verbatim. But when she woke him up, and she was standing at the foot of his bed one night. Now, people are always hearing disembodied voices and laughs, like giggle. They hear the girls giggling and laughing and whispering a lot, but you also hear conversations going on, too, throughout this whole house in different areas. Now, there's an apparition of a male spirit who's often seen in the kitchen, but the guy in the kitchen seems to be just kicking it, like he's relaxed. He's sitting down, like you'd see somebody who'd be reading a paper or something, and they say that this is probably the former colonel who used to reside at this place. And this guy doesn't seem to really bother anybody. He's just, relaxing. Probably, back in the day, like it'd be maybe residual. How a guy sits down, reads the paper, smokes a cigar, and has coffee. You know what I mean? Type of vibe.
Yeah.
But they also talk about seeing a female servant who's always seen roaming up and down the staircase. I actually seen more visually on the staircase more than other places, but she is often seen in different places. But people think that she's just going about her business of what she always did when she was alive. And then you have people who are always seeing these shadow figures in several locations inside and outside of this place. Now, outside of this place, there's like a little, oh, what do you call those places where it's like a little porch type of thing and you go sit out on it. It's just like a circle. I forgot what you call them.
Veranda.
Well, sort of. I don't know, but you know what I'm talking about.
Gazebo.
Gazebo. Thank you. I don't know why that word went out of my head, but there's like this gazebo type thing off to the side, and staff members have talked about seeing a dark entity hanging around there, and when they do see that, when they tend to get fearful of it. So I don't know if it's giving off like a negative vibe or what, but like I said, this has been on different paranormal investigation shows. I think it was like on the Dead Files, and she claimed like she saw tons of dead bodies there, but I don't know. We can only surmise if it's real or not. But if people are interested, you actually can go check this place out, and they offer paranormal investigations. It's for a fee, of course. You can go there for a few hours to an overnight stay. So it's probably like $100 to a couple $100, depending on how long. And I'm sure the bigger the group, the better a discount, probably. You know what I mean? But you can check out.
So.
Yeah, but you can check out their prices, for that on their website and such. But they do offer tours, and events are held there. Like if you want to get married or things like that, they do have things like that too. But this place, I know it's just beautiful inside and out. The picture doesn't do it justice right here, you know what I mean? But this is another place that's extremely, if you're going to go, it's pretty much guaranteed you'll probably have some type of experience when it comes to paranormal, be it residual or intelligent. And it doesn't matter the time of day here. It just seems to be occurring at all times. And I just thought it was fascinating. And worth mentioning, even though it's a popular one, it's one I'm interested in checking out myself.
BPG has got a question. Says, can she haunt both places?
I don't know. I think they might have been joking about the little white girl or something. The little white girl's dress spirit or something. I'm not sure. I didn't catch all
Could
of
be.
it. But you know what? Okay. Kids in adult style places. So maybe, back in the day, in the 1800s, a white little gown was normal for sleeping in and other things, so.
Well, yeah, they go to church in white.
Attire for back then.
Yeah.
You want to hit your place, your next one up?
Can we take a quick break so I can get settled here because I got kicked off the internet?
Yeah, and see if you can get everything working. Yeah, because it sounds like you're using your tablet because your PC's different.
I am. I'm using my Kindle right now.
Okay, well, we'll take a quick 3-minute break, and then we'll be back to finish the second hour. We have a ton more places to talk about, so stay with us, guys. We'll be right back in 3 minutes. Welcome back to Anything But Ordinary. I'm your host, Raven, and Spooky's back with us. Tonight's topic is Haunted Nevada. We are talking about several different locations that seem to have a wide variety of paranormal activity, and some of these places do tend to have cryptid sightings too.
Yeah.
But, we got Spooky back on her computer, so we'll hope her computer stays going until she can get that part to fix it. But, we just got done talking about the Mackay Mansion, which, is an awesome place. I want to go check out, let alone just for the structure and the building, but for the paranormal stuff, definitely. If you go, you're going to experience something, that's for sure. Residual or intelligent. That place is a place to go. And, it's not the only place in Virginia City that's haunted. You also got the cemetery that's right nearby. So you could be busy there for a week or two just...
You could spend a week there in Virginia City.
Maybe more. Probably
Maybe be lucky enough to run into the Cartwrights. A lot of people don't know. Well, for people who do know, the television show Bonanza with the Cartwright family, they lived on the Ponderosa. When they'd go into town, they'd always go into Virginia City.
Yeah, but in real life, they were probably filming in Canada. Why am I stuck in Canada? California.
Well, Lauren Green was from Canada, so who knows?
I meant to say they were filming in California.
Probably.
Although I love Canada, so you know what we have to do? We have to do haunted shows in Canada because Canada has tons of places. I'm always Googling, looking up paranormal hotspots, and Canada is tons of places.
A lot of spots in Canada pop up.
Yes. Well, you were gonna do your place. What was it?
Whiskey Pete's.
Whiskey Pete's.
It sits at 100 West Prim Road, just off of Interstate 15 in Jean, Nevada. Actually, it sits between Jean and Prim, Nevada. And I chose this place because I've actually been there more than once. As a matter of fact, it was one of my favorite places to stop. Excuse me. It's a hotel casino in the Prim Valley area owned by Affinity Gaming. And this is no small place. This is 777 rooms, plus all of the amenities, including a race and sports book. You could do all your betting here.
Did you say all your damn gambling?
Yeah, all of that.
Do all your damn gambling here.
Yeah, do it all. Shoot.
Yeah.
The property was originally owned by an old miner named Pete McIntyre, who built a gas station there. He was thinking, that people driving through the desert are going to need gas and cold drinks. But unfortunately, he was struggling to make a living, so he resorted to moonshining and bootlegging, thus the name Whiskey Pete. And actually, his sideline was much more profitable than his gas station.
You could use moonshine to run your car back then.
Back then you could.
You get race car out of that.
The old moonshiners used to keep from getting caught, they would just put the moonshine in their gas tanks, run their cars on them.
Actually, I think we were supposed to do a show on moonshine and the runners and stuff because that was a request. We gotta get back to doing some of those old Western things again too, because people are asking for that too.
Pete died in 1933, and it said that he wanted to be buried standing up with a bottle of his bootleg in his hands because he wanted to watch over the area. Now, whether or not this happened is not mentioned, but in any case, Pete was buried in an unmarked grave, which was accidentally opened in the 1970s when a footbridge was built over the interstate so people could have easy access to the casino, Buffalo Bill's, across the road.
Hey, when they buried him standing up, did he want his head outside of the grave? Because you said so he could.
I never said, and I don't know if they buried him standing up or not. I just know they buried him on the property in an unmarked grave. That's all I know. So anyway, his body was moved, and while people are not sure where it was reburied, some say that it's in one of the caves in the area where he used to cook up his moonshine. Now, being a casino in the middle of the desert, I'm sure the place had its share of gangsters and violence. And one death attributed to the area anyway was in November of 1987. It was a 7-year-old boy named Alexander Harris. He was in the arcade room and he just disappeared. A month later, his body was found off the property. I think it was found something like 10 miles away or something like that. Now, there was an arrest and a trial, but that person was acquitted of all charges, and to this day, the crime is basically unsolved. Now, also on display inside the casino is the original Bonnie and Clyde death car. This is a 1933 Ford Deluxe, which they had stolen. Now, you've all heard of them, right? Bank robbers, murderers, thieves. They were driving along.
Is that the one they were shot up in?
Yeah, Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow.
Nice. That alone could have some.
They were driving along and they were ambushed in Louisiana by marshals and shot on May 23rd, 1934. And in fact, there were over 100 bullets fired into that car.
Yeah, I would think there'd be some kind of weird energy attached to that for sure.
Well, there was. There sure was. Anyway.
Car.
They were ambushed, and the car is preserved in the condition it was in after the ambush, along with blood on the seats. They got plastic on the seats, and
so they kept all the
yeah, the bullet holes, the whole 9 yards. You know, I mean, this you could tell somebody died in that car. It shot up.
Oh, yeah. 100 bullets.
And I've seen this car. As a matter of fact, this car, them advertising this car is what got me in there. Because for some reason, I wanted to see it. And after all these years, it still gave off this energy that to me was very, very uncomfortable. And also on display is the bullet-riddled shirt that Clyde Barrow was wearing at the time of the ambush. And even that did not give off a very good energy. There's also a copy of the letter that Clyde Barrow wrote to the Ford Motor Company stating how much he liked Ford. And he even put in the letter, any chance I get, I always steal a Ford. I thought that was funny. As far as the hauntings, it said that Pete is seen in the casino watching people. He does not interact, but the appearance seemed to be an intelligent one because he walks around, he's watching people gambling, and just generally keeping an eye on things. And
how do they know it's him? Because they have a picture of him and knows what he looks like, or?
Well, it's this apparition of a guy in period dress, so I'm assuming that that's who they think it is, because it said that he has appeared to be so solid, dressed in his old clothes, that some people have mistaken him to be, like somebody hired to walk around, as Whiskey Pete. And when anyone walked up to talk to him, they said that he won't answer their questions, and he just disappears right in front of them.
Typical male. So, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Just kidding.
So it's
so
whoever this is, and it only makes sense that it'd be Whiskey Pete, or they would think it was.
Yeah. Well, if he loved the place so much and wanted to be buried with his head out so he could watch everything's going on at his place, why not stay there?
Well, he liked the area, that's for sure. He liked the area. But it's also been said that people who come to the casino with their gas gauge on empty,
yeah,
and go in there and gamble, when they come back at night, they'll get in their cars and their gas tanks will be full.
Free gas, woo!
Free gas, exactly. Especially for the losers who go in there, and they lose what little money they have. Because there's always somebody that thinks they're going to get rich gambling, and spend their last dollar doing that.
Some people do, though. Some people have the touch.
Some people do. Some have that luck. Not me.
Yeah.
But I would like to go someplace and spend big chunk of my money and come out and find a full tank of gas in my vehicle.
Well, I'd like to go someplace too and spend a big chunk of your money, but that ain't happening.
Well, there's another apparition in there.
Yeah.
And this one is believed to be Clyde Barrow. Now, this man has been seen, he's dressed in an old suit from, the 30s and 40s. and he's standing and even walking around the area where the death car is displayed, and around the glass case holding Clyde Barrow's shirt. And this is another one that has appeared so solid that people have mistaken him as a lookalike. You know, another person hired to go in there. Yeah, for ambiance or whatever, you know. And but they said that he doesn't speak with anyone, but he walks around smiling and nodding at people. There are also reports of a young child who wanders around the casino, and some have even reported it because children now are not allowed in the casinos. And when people have gone to look for him, he was nowhere to be found. Now, this one too is said to be kind of a little trickster, you know, just running around and kind of giggling and just running through, like, you know, like he has no upbringing whatsoever.
Cool. I find it fascinating that a lot of these apparitions almost look so solid.
That's what people have said, that these apparitions are so solid that they have been mistaken for real, you know, living people.
I've never experienced one where they're like, oh, I shouldn't say that, because that one that I just talked about on our last show in Tennessee, and the shadow entity, that was pretty solid. But
I've seen several that were real solid that I thought were real people.
But, you know, how do we know? You don't know what you're, you know, when you're walking down the street, or, you know what I mean, or in a store.
Yeah.
If you're walking by a full body apparition, you never really know because you're so busy. You don't really pay attention.
I know. But all of these hauntings, while they seem to be intelligent, they also seem to be benign. They don't bother anybody. They don't even, you know, when you walk up to talk to them, that, you know, if you mistake them for a lookalike, so to speak, they have been said to just disappear right in front of you.
I find it kind of fascinating, but I would like to go there just to see the car as well. You know what I mean? Just because it's just a part of our America's history, in, you know, as far as the
that was
criminal
one of the
type
things
of thing and things like that. And I know that you've gone there a few times, and I think there was a couple other people we know about that went there, and they all talked about just when you were around the car, there's like this weird energy. And I'm sure it's probably just because of the events that took place around and the killing of, but...
And for those of for the people looking at the photo, the casino where the car is displayed is the shorter building. But the car is what drew me in, because I thought, I got to see this. This is history. You know, granted, it's morbid, but it was still history. You know, I mean, these were very well-known outlaws, so to speak. You can't exactly call them gangsters. And so I went in there and I walked around this car, and the energy just made me feel so uncomfortable. I wasn't uncomfortable enough that I walked away from it, because nothing bothered me. Mm-hmm. You know.
But you didn't see any...
I didn't see any apparition. You know, if Clyde Barrow was there, I missed him.
And he missed filling up your car, too, right?
I know, and
oh, darn, you know.
I walked out, no extra gas. But, you know, it was still interesting. And reading the letter he wrote to the Ford Motor Company, I stood there and laughed out loud in front of all those people that were standing there when I read that letter. But it's still a history thing, and that's what basically drew me in.
So do they hear any, I guess it's the casino, so it's hard to tell because all you hear is ding, 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 ding. You know what I mean? So you wouldn't know if you're hearing disembodied voices or not.
No, you wouldn't, because those casinos are loud anyway. There's constant humming and conversations anyway. Yeah. I didn't find anything about any hauntings in the hotel itself, which is that taller building.
Right.
But, according to everything that I found, mm-hmm. the apparitions are in the casino.
Cool.
And they're not very far.
One goes outside too, because...
And as soon as you walk in, the car is right there on your left. And and from what I read, Whiskey Pete walks all around the casino. There's no telling what part of that casino you'll find him in.
Yeah.
And it's the same with the kid, with the little boy.
Now, oh, near Whiskey Pete's, are there other places that you kind of read that seem to have
Well,
paranormal
it's not
activity?
really that far outside of Las Vegas.
Oh,
And
well,
I'm sure there's
Vegas
a lot
has,
of hauntings in Las Vegas. I've read that
yes.
just about all of those older casinos are haunted.
There are a lot
And
of places in
and this
Vegas.
area is actually, and now it's kind of built up because there's several casinos around in this area.
Mm-hmm.
And it, it sits south of Las Vegas. Matter of fact, it's probably about 20-25 miles south of Las Vegas. And then about another 5 miles down the road, you got California. So it's sitting right out here where
Right.
basically there's nothing. And
Right.
I'm sure he wasn't the only bootlegger in the area.
Well, right, and then you had everybody traversing east to west too. So,
Right,
and then of
right.
course Vegas, the Strip. You know, all these different hotels they talk about having paranormal activity as well. But just from the time period when people were coming in here in droves during the 1800s, there was a lot of, because back in the 1800s there was really no laws, and the when you're heading out west. I mean, we did, what was some of those shows of the 1800 serial killers and stuff, and the lawlessness and stuff that was occurring. It's insane. But
I know. And this was a time really that Las Vegas wasn't all that big.
yes.
Las Vegas was just building up.
Right. There's these little
So,
places scattered throughout the area,
yeah.
but it's not just
And you
paranormal.
got a couple of little ghost towns in the area too,
Yeah.
up on the other side of that hill there.
So this
I
is
think there was a
another,
small
on your
ghost
way
town
to
there.
hitting up
Yeah.
Nevada. There's just a lot of places that you can be checking out on the way, and we're just trying to share a bunch of them. But I found another place that I'm interested in, which, it's kind of popular too, but I'm talking about it because I'm interested in, if I'm going out here, I want to hit up tons of places. And there's a lot more places that we won't be able to talk about that we'll have to talk about during our second Nevada State show. But it's the Yellow Jack Mine, which is also located in Virginia City. Like I'm saying, you can spend a lot of time in Virginia City for a while. But this is, right off of, or near Main Street, near the Gold Hill Hotel, which people have seen on some paranormal shows, you know what I mean? But it was during the 1850s that many of these miners found their way to this area, I'm talking, and they were, setting up their mine camps, and like you said, a bunch of them were like crude shacks and tents back then. But in 1862, the town of Gold Hill was incorporated in December, and the Yellow Jack mines were operated from 1927 to 1942, and basically after that time period they were no longer profitable. But
Right.
the miners, they moved on to other areas like they always do. You just bounce from mine to mine to mine trying to make your money. But for a brief time there, they had over 8,000 residents that were inhabiting this area during the 1800s, which is really a lot if you think about it. Because you're traversing
Yeah.
all over the place on foot or horseback. It's not like nowadays. So that's a lot of people to get in that area at that time. But in 1869, on the morning of April 7th, this fire broke out in the Yellow Jack mine, which was around the 800-foot level. And 35, I don't know if it was 35 or 45 men, but I'm thinking it was 35 men, accounted for anyway, lost their lives, and it was said that some of their bodies were never recovered. Now, during the fire, family and friends of the miners could only stand and watch as the mine burned because the fire was so intense that it had burned for like several days, and they had collapsing
Wow.
timbers, and the fire started quickly spreading into the neighboring mines, so it really hindered any rescue attempts that they could. So eventually what the other guys did, they ended up having to seal, the other miners ended up having to seal off those offending levels, you know, and they said that those levels that were sealed off remained hot for several years, you know.
Wow.
Now, people said that the fire was, caused by an unintended lantern and someone got knocked over and it spread quickly. What others say, or they surmise, that it was actually set intentionally. Now, either way, you know, we don't know for a fact, but either way, this is just one of the worst mining events that ever did occur in Nevada's history. And they had a lot of mining accidents. You know what I mean? Like I was talking before, they had over 300.
People don't realize exactly how many mines were in Nevada. There was probably more mines in Nevada than there were in California.
Yeah, I think so. Because there's more ghost towns in Nevada than anywhere else that I've ever read about, that I can think of at the top of my head. But, you know, many miners were, during the time that after this fire happened and they were still working there, many miners were actually frightened by paranormal activity that were taking place in the 1800s. Because I was reading from their little booklets and newspaper things that they had back then, and they were printing about the miners not wanting to go back into this mine, being scared off and moving to somewhere else because there was so much messed up things that were going on there. And I think it kind of happened a little bit before the fire, but a lot after the fire. But people would be going into now my cat's pounding on the door again. But many talk about, you know, hearing these disembodied footsteps that were actually stalking them in the dark. Imagine being in a cave back in the 1800s and you only have like a candle or a little lantern in one hand and you're carrying your pickaxe in the other, you know, and you're not...
So this is activity that went back even back then when the mine was still being operated.
Yeah, this is when it was in operation during this time as the hauntings I'm talking about first right now. But they were talking about hearing things stalking them in the dark and nobody being around. Like two guys would be working together and nobody else is on that level. You know, and they would go looking to find who was in there in the darkness and nobody was there. They would hear disembodied voices or conversations, which I guess some conversations could probably carry throughout a cave. Okay, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But they would be hearing screams and cries of people being in massive pain and anguish. So they would assume that this was the men that were dying during the fire during that time. But this is during the 1800s that people are freaking out. They're like, oh, I'm not going back in there. I don't care. I'm going to another mine or whatever. I give up. It's too freaky. And look, one man, while he was in the mine alone, he went to like retrieve 2 shovels. And when he was in there, he had the lantern in one hand. He grabbed the 2 shovels, had them under his arm, and he was heading back down the different levels. And he heard these footsteps following him. So he'd pause for a moment and he'd call out, be like, hey. But he heard no response. So he's like, okay. So he starts going along again. And then all of a sudden, boom, he's shoved from the back. And the shovels go flying out, you know, because he had to hold up underneath his armpit, you know, like holding them tight. These shovels went flying. He got shoved, you know, and he had a good grip on these things. And he turned around, there was nothing there. So, of course, he booked it out of there. Because this guy actually kind of made jokes about the other miners, like, ha ha, you know, there's nothing there. You guys are afraid of nothing. Da, da. Well, then it happened to him, too. Now, you know, there these men back after the fire and stuff who are working in the mines. They always talk about seeing these shadow entities as well. These things moving around in the darkness, kind of following them or watching them, which I could never work in a mine. Or underground.
I couldn't either. I'm claustrophobic. That alone would stop me.
I don't know. There's just something freaky about being underground. Or I could never go out in outer space because I wouldn't want to rely on technology and machines to keep me alive. And I just don't want to be at the bottom of the ocean either. And being deep underground. Just those are my 3 things I'm not huge on. So now it sounds like I'm like super fearful. If somebody threw me in that situation, I wouldn't try to make my way to normalcy, you know what I mean? But it's not something I would choose to do per se at this time period in my life. But, you know, people would see these shadow figures as well. And like I said, this one guy, well, I didn't say it, I'm about to say it now, but there's this one guy I read who actually fled the mine, stating that he was never, ever, ever going to return to mining ever again for the rest of his life. Because when he was in there, he saw something that scared him so bad that he didn't want to tell anybody what it was. But I don't think the way that he was telling his story in some way, it didn't sound like it was just paranormal. Like he could have saw like a cryptid or a creature type of thing that freaked him out so bad. But he said he took it as a warning that if he worked in mines ever again, that if he stayed there, it was going to be the death of him. So he just like, that's all I'm going to say, and I'm out of here, right? But eventually, you know, the mine was shut down, like I said earlier. You know what I mean? Back, what was it, like in the 60s? What did I say when it shut down? I forgot. 1942,
42.
basically. Yeah. Um, but the mine is closed off to the public today, but you can still see the inclined chute that they had, the head frame, and then of course you have the miner's cabin. Then the miner cabin is located at the base of the mine near the head frame, and the cabin at the time was actually used by the miners to kind of enter and leave the mine, which basically was used as a checkpoint to stop any theft of gold or silver by the men who worked there at the
Right.
mines, you know. But the cabin has a full kitchen, has 2 bathrooms, I believe, 2 queen beds, you know, like a futon or something. I guess it can kind of hold up to like 6 people. And it does have like a small eating table. And the Gold Hill Hotel actually rents out that cabin to those who, you know, like, hey, I'm going to spend the night. I'm like super brave, you know what I mean? But many
Yeah.
have said when they were staying in that cabin that they too have experienced things. You know, they hear strange sounds occurring outside the cabin. They hear disembodied voices and footsteps outside and inside the cabin. And people actually talk about being touched. Like they'll be
Wow.
sleeping and they'll wake up and see something standing there, you know, for a brief moment. But like I said, the whole town seems to be haunted. And more than likely, you're going to have experience anywhere you go in Virginia City. Because, like, a lot of the places, I guess, tonight kind of were in Virginia City, but I can't help it. They're places that I want to see, and I felt like, hey, I'm going to talk about this. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
the cabin, you know, the cabin's right there by the mine. So, you know, if there's this activity occurring in the mine, you're going to have it outside the mine as well, you know. But it goes all the
Right.
way down to the Gold Hill Hotel. I mean, the Gold Hill Hotel is known for its activity as well. You know, you can only imagine the fights that people got in, the stabbings and stealing of, you know,
Well,
gold
you
and
were talking about the whole town
a hotbed.
being haunted. There's a place there called the Sugarloaf Mountain Motel.
Mm-hmm.
There in Virginia City, and they actually in every room they actually have what they call a ghost log. And what you do is if you experience any paranormal activity while staying there, you write it down in the log. And every room has one.
So every room is somebody has experienced something in almost every room in the Sugarloaf Motel.
I'm guessing because every single room has a ghost log. It's a notebook they leave out, and they tell you, if you have a paranormal event, write it down.
You know, when I know you're doing your research, I can't say for what you were reading, but I know when I was reading things, I was reading that not just paranormal stuff, but people were seeing unidentified flying objects in these areas as well. And you can go
I read that too.
to these, okay, so we try to keep things separate. Okay, we try to keep, the paranormal one about the paranormal one, then we're going to do like a cryptid Nevada, and then I'm sure we'll do like alien Nevada or whatever. The title will be different, but you know what I mean, and then just specifically focus on those things. But you're not just going to probably have paranormal experiences here, but you're going to probably run into some other strange things, let alone interesting people, because there's a wide variety of people who visit Nevada for multiple reasons. So don't be afraid to strike up conversations with people, because you would, sometimes you're like thinking you're weird and you're like, oh dude, I'm totally normal compared to some people out there, you know what I mean?
I've thought that.
But when you think of these underground cave systems and tunnels that they're going into and stuff, and it's not just the Yellowjack mine. There's tons of these mines where people are talking about hearing creatures or voices, and nobody's in the cave system. You know what I mean? And then there's people who've even talked about in some of these I think it was the flying humanoid episode we did. Oh,
Yeah.
Was it the town of Van Meter or another place? I can't remember which one it was, but there was these humanoids flying out of these caves that people were mining and attacking people and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's just fascinating that when people are going underground, they're experiencing and tapping into things that we don't, people say doesn't exist or can't exist, but there's strange things that are occurring. But I don't know.
Right.
Virginia City is the place to go, I'm saying. It's just one of of many in Nevada to hit up. That's basically it. But the cabin, you can rent out the cabin. Either if you're staying in the Gold Hill Hotel or, like you said, the Sugarloaf Motel or this little cabin, you know, it sounds like you're going to experience something.
And those weren't the only 2 haunted hotels in Virginia City. Mm-hmm. You know, I think there was like 4, maybe even 5 of them for sure that were reported to be haunted.
Yeah. You want to do your next one? We're kind of going to shorten up tonight just because you're having computer issues. You know what I mean? So we probably won't be on for 2 hours. But, you know, if you want to, because I know your computer's overheating, so we're going to try to do another one, hopefully.
Okay, the Bowers Mansion. It's at 4005 U.S. Highway 3395 North, Carson City, Nevada. And the mansion is actually located between Reno and Carson City in an area called Washoe. It was built in 1863 by Lemuel Sandy Bowers and his wife, Eiley. The mansion is not a lot is mentioned about Sandy Bowers, but Eiley is the most written about woman in Nevada history. She was born September 6th in 1826 in Forfar, Scotland. She married a Stephen Hunter, who was a Mormon, at the age of 15. He was 19 at the time, and this was like around 1841. Now, they moved to America.
Which is an average age back then to get married.
Well, back then, that was the average age for marriage.
Yeah, some of them actually got married younger. So I'm thinking 19, boy, he married late, you know, but for back then, you know what I mean?
Well, if she'd have been 16, she would have been considered an old maid.
I know. That's awful for back then.
They moved to America in 1849. They settled in Salt Lake City, Utah. Well, not long after that, they divorced, and this was because Stephen, being a Mormon at the time, he took on a second wife, and Eiley was having no part of that. She wouldn't tolerate it, so she divorced him.
Mm-hmm. She was a one-man.
Yeah, really. Mm-hmm. Well, in 1853, she married an Alexander Cohen, another Mormon, and they settled near Virginia City, Nevada. They bought these 320 acres that had a natural hot spring. And you were talking about Nevada has the most ghost towns of any other state out there. Mm-hmm. Well, Nevada, there are over 300 natural hot springs in Nevada, and that's more than in any other state, even Wyoming, which is basically geothermal. Yeah.
I thought Wyoming, well, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I would have thought too it'd been Wyoming, but they say, it said that Nevada has more natural hot springs than any other state.
They say that some of these, you know, hot springs and these natural type of areas tend to have more paranormal activity too. There's like something about the energy and everything that help them.
Oh yeah. Alexander started farming, and Eiley opened up a boarding house for the local miners. But because of the Utah Mormon War and the Mountain Meadows Massacre in 1857, which this was back when people did not like the Mormon religion because of their practicing polygamy, Brigham Young called for all the Mormons to return to Salt Lake City. Well, Alexander returned, but Eiley refused to go.
Oh, so she stayed behind.
She stayed, and Alexander did return a few times to be with her, but his last visit was in like 1859, and she divorced him, and she received all this land in the divorce.
Nice.
Now, she continued to operate a boarding house.
That's like 320 acres. Uh-oh. I think I lost Spooky again. Oh, hold on, guys. I think... Spooky, did you mute or did your computer crash? I hear you, Spooky. Hello? I heard her for a second. You got
Are you there?
Yeah, I hear you. Are you here?
Yeah.
Okay, your computer kicked off, but you're back on the tablet?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're close to finishing up. We'll like let you do yours, and then hopefully we'll make it through the end of that. You know what I mean, dude?
Okay, well, I hope everybody can hear me okay.
Wait, let me check the volume
Oh.
setting real quick before you continue. And hopefully you'll be able to get your computer fixed here. It says you're still on setup good, so go ahead. Go ahead, Spooky.
Okay, like I said, she received all this land in the divorce, and she was still operating this boarding house for the miners, and one of them happened to be Sandy Bowers, and he had a 20-foot claim. Now, 20-foot claim doesn't sound like much, but for the Comstock load, it was quite a bit. He and Eiley were married in August of 1859, and like I said, you wouldn't think a 20-foot claim would be much, but they hit the mother lode. Their claim paid more than any other claim, and it made them Nevada's first millionaires.
Oh, sweet. That was the woman, right?
That was the woman.
See? So all that bad luck paid off for something good. Karma good for her. You know what I mean?
Yep, sure did.
Being a millionaire
Anyway,
back then is like...
Well, it paid them over $4 million, which would be around $100 million today.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
back
what I'm
then,
saying.
$4 million went a long way.
Yeah, it's a huge difference for... I mean, they were like super rich compared to, you know... Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
That's a huge vein.
So, anyway, and it also made him one of the richest people in America.
Nice.
So,
so they have like over $4 million.
Mansion.
Okay. Go on. So they built the mansion.
They began to build this mansion on all this land that Eiley owned. And so they started to, they took off while the mansion was under construction. They took off on a tour of Europe because they wanted to find furnishings for their new home. And when they returned, they not only had a new home and new furnishings, they also had a new baby daughter named Margaret Persia Bowers, which that right there told you they were gone a long time.
I would say so.
Before they left, though, they had two other children, a boy and a girl, but neither one of them lived past the age of 3 months. Eiley finally had the respect and social status that she always wanted. This was one thing that's why she came to America. She wanted to be rich, she wanted social status, and she wanted respect. And everything was great for 6 years, and then Sandy died of a lung disease called silicosis, which is caused from breathing in that crystalline silica dust in the mine.
Yeah, from the mines. Yeah, that happened to a lot of people back then.
Yeah, he was only like 35 when he died. And so he was buried in their family cemetery, which sits on the hill above the mansion. Now, after his death, Eiley discovered that Sandy did not manage the family finances very well. He made large loans to people without securing collateral. He made bad investments. He also took out large loans and gave his stock in the mine as collateral. And basically, Eiley was destitute. Now, she started working again at many things, trying to hold on to her mansion because she wasn't about to let it go. So she started renting out rooms. She held large events there. She opened it up as a spa.
Mm-hmm.
She did laundry for the miners. She even held seances claiming to be a seer.
Yeah, but you know what? Wait, before you move. Wait before you move on. The seance things and seers and mediumship actually started in the early 1800s, and that was a huge move. We did a whole show on the movement and history of mediumship, as well as talking about some of the crazy events that took place, which is another good show you guys should check out. But for her to hold seances and to claim she was a seer back then was kind of a normal thing. It was kind of like the big thing to do back then, or during that time period, because it was all across the whole country. Yeah,
basically, you're right.
But she was smart. She's like, well, I need to make some money, so, I mean, she wasn't hard to work. She's like, I'll do this, I'll do your laundry, you know what I mean? Sound like she was a very intelligent woman, you know?
Well, she was really actually a savvy businesswoman, you know, and it surprises me that she let her husband manage all the finances, that she didn't have a hand in that.
Which she probably did, but, just, the background type of thing.
Yeah. Well, in July of 1874, there were four diseases that broke out in the area: typhoid, malaria, diphtheria, and cholera. And Persia contracted a fever and she died. This was in 1876. And also that same year, Eiley lost her mansion to foreclosure and she was forced to leave it. So she moved to Virginia City and she continued her career as a seer. But in 1880, when with the decline of the mining industry, she moved to San Francisco, where she died October 27th, 1903. Her ashes were sent back and buried on the hill alongside with her husband and her children. And the mansion is currently owned by the Washoe County Parks Department, and they do tours of the mansion in the summer and the fall, and you can go to their website for prices. From what I saw, their prices are actually reasonable. Now, on one note, though, in April of 1914, an earthquake hit the area, and it damaged the third floor of the mansion, so it had to be removed.
Yeah, I put the second
we have
photo.
Two pictures, one with the third floor there, and then what it looks like now.
Yeah, the first part. Yeah, the first part I had the original building, and then I just popped in the second photo for you. So it has the missing third floor. So
now, as far as the hauntings go, there are cold spots and disembodied voices. Eiley is said to haunt the second floor, and her apparition has been seen up there. I'm assuming it was hers. There's children's voices, and sometimes people will hear sobbing, and they'll hear both a man's voice and a woman's voice, like they're in conversation. There's been moving objects. Like I said, an apparition of a woman in period dress. And in the cemetery on the hill, they said on moonless nights, there's been numerous reports of glowing apparitions and orbs of light that you can see with your eye.
This is the thing that I found fascinating, because every place we've talked about tonight in Nevada, they all talk about seeing glowing orbs or, a glowing light of sort that's always moving about. Yeah. On the ground or through a building or in a building structure, So, not a lot of places have that same consistency as it seems that Nevada does, and everywhere. Even out in the middle of the desert, people are seeing glowing orbs of light or glowing apparitions. So I find that interesting, because I don't read that all the time. When we did a show on was it the Jenny Wade House in some parts of Gettysburg and stuff, they didn't always talk about seeing glow. You see orbs and stuff, but not like things like that they're talking about in Nevada. Nevada's just so interesting. But I find that her history and her story, this is what we like doing the show, because we like talking about why.
Well, I paraphrased her story.
Yeah, but
she came from nowhere, made millions. You could just about do a half a show on this woman.
Wow.
So I really greatly paraphrased that story. And we're putting up the link to her if anybody wants to read about her, because she's a very interesting woman. And she was someone that was determined that she was not going to be poor. Yeah. Even though she did end up that way.
Yeah. I'd be interested to see if we could dig more on about some of the seances that she was holding, since she was doing it for a living. Because remember we were talking about
seances right there in the house after her husband died. She started out really trying to contact him, and then she started making a living at it.
Yeah, because you had the Fox sisters back then, who was really well known, which we talked a lot about on that show we did, the mediumship and stuff. We talked about a lot of people who were, doing this stuff that were really well known back in the day, and some of the tricks that they use, or some of the things that people couldn't debunk. But dang it, was it the Kelly family? Weren't they posing as doing seances too, to lure people in, and then they ended up killing them during this time? And they were on the travels of people heading from the east to the west too. So that I can understand.
That was on Chisholm Trail.
Yeah, I can understand why some of these spots, like California, Nevada, Wyoming, and some of these other places, are just, you could be out in the middle of nowhere, or be in a town in a building, and you're seeming having some type of paranormal activity, just because of all the things that have happened throughout history in that area. It's insane.
Yeah.
We want to thank everybody for sticking with us, and we apologize for Spooky's computer. Sometimes you can't control what happens. Things just go downhill sometimes, and gotta buy new stuff.
Yeah, I was hoping that it would last. I didn't want to tear into it today because of the show tonight. I'm going to tear into it tomorrow.
Yeah, it's probably just your power supply from what it sounds like, because it overheats.
But I want to thank everybody that came tonight and put up with us.
They didn't put up with us. They enjoy
we don't have
hanging
another
out with
topic right now, but we will be posting one in a few days.
Right. And we actually might, we were thinking about possibly putting up like a poll on the Facebook page and putting like 3 different show topics and then letting you guys decide which one you want us to do and go from there too. But I just want to say thank you guys for coming, and if you want to get show reminders, you can click here. Well, you click on our name basically and subscribe. Get subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then it'll remind you when we have live events. Or you can go to our website, anythingbutordinary2.wix.com/anythingbutordinary, and you can sign up for weekly email reminders. Well, we're not doing weekly shows yet, every other week. Or you can even contact us there, give us show ideas, or just banter back and forth with us about different topics or whatever. We hope you guys all have a great week, and we'll see you at
Hope y'all had a good Thanksgiving, and hope you have a very good week, and thank you, everybody. And don't forget to share us on any social media you happen to be a part of.
Right. All right, you guys take care, and we'll see you at our next show. Good night.
Good night.